and polishing. So obviously this is the head off of like the 212, or in this case a 208. They're all more or less the same. So you see how this is the intake right there. See how the edges are very abrupt, very sharp. Maybe the other side would be a little easier to see. See how it's just very sharp in there? That's not conducive to a very good flow. But you also don't want to take off so much material that you're compromising the integrity of the head. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off a little bit on top, or there we go, a little bit up here, round that off, smooth out the edges, and we're not going to touch where the valve seat is. You do not want to touch, I'm going to repeat, do not touch the valve seat. If you accidentally nick it, you might be able to maybe just put some valve grinding compound and get it taken care of, but if not, you're going to either have to get a new head, cut a new valve seat, excuse me, and it's just not pretty. So that's the intake. The exhaust is exactly the same thing, except just darker. Here we go. The exhaust is a little bit more difficult just for the fact that it's just a smaller area you're going to have to work in. It's not much, but when you're dealing with a Dremel tool or an air filer or however you want to do this, it can be a little cumbersome. So we're going to do that. Now, like I said, you don't want to take off a whole lot because you don't want to ruin it, but you just want to imagine flow. Something else that I like to do, at least on the intake, is I like to take a very fine grade of sandpaper, like 600 grit, maybe 800 if you can get it, just a little bit. Put it on my finger and just kind of rough it up. Just rough up everything on the inside of the intake, because right now if you were to feel it, it's pretty smooth. That's not exactly what you want. You want to have it be kind of a gritty or rough, because as the air and the fuel flows through there, the fuel is going to hit it and start to break apart into smaller little pieces or itemize. That gives you a much more cleaner and efficient burn. So you don't want it to be silky smooth, you don't want to polish it, you don't want to do anything like that. You just want to port this end. Now this is the adapter that's going to go on the intake. It's generally the same size. I'm not too much of a fan of it, but yeah. I'm going to do the same exact thing on the adapter. See how it's very shiny and very slick in there? I don't want that. Something else that you want to check is put it on however it's supposed to be. It's a lot easier. You see how on this one you see like little ridges? A little ridge in there where the two, like the adapter meets up. You don't want that. I'm going to grind a little bit of that off. So I'm going to take like a Sharpie, and to my best of ability I'm going to take the plate, screw it on, take the Sharpie, just kind of mark where it is, then just kind of smooth it out so it all fits in. If it was the exact opposite where this was the problem, something else you should want to do if you don't see anything like this is you want to put it on and put your finger in there and just kind of see and feel. In fact, I'm going to do it on the bottom as well. If there's any type of like overlap on the other side. So this piece is too big. If that's the case, then you do your grinding on this. So definitely keep that in mind when you put the adapter on. The exhaust. So no matter what engine you get, it's not going to be clean. Like I believe it's for quality control. They're going to run it for a quick moment. But so in here, there's a little bit of soot. It's not horrible, but you're going to want to do the porting, just as I explained, and then you do want to polish this one. You do not want this one rough. You want the gases that are spent, all the exhaust gases, out as fast as humanly possible. Not having it escape quickly is going to just waste a lot of energy for the piston to shove it out. So if you're able to get that as smooth as possible, that's the case. That's the best case scenario. That one, really, what you end up having to do is just kind of get like one of those buffer wheels. I'll show you some of these, but it's really the only real way to do it in my opinion. I mean, there's other options, but they never really get that smooth. So this is the workhorse that I'm going to be using for the majority of it. It's just a stone grinding wheel. It takes off a lot of material, and it's small enough to fit in there where I'm able to smooth out. The edges I'm not able to do with this. This one only gets a lot of the big pieces. For the finer pieces, and like I said, this is just a Dremel. Air equivalent is perfectly fine. Whatever you need to do, or just get a hand file. But I like using these for the big pieces. These are little carbide bits that also fit in there. They're pretty cheap. They're not too expensive. They don't like to be used slowly. They need to be in a very fast machine. So a Dremel is probably the slowest you're going to want to get. If you're using the air equivalent, you're going to want to make sure that your airflow is to the recommended or even a little higher if you're able to without damaging. And go in there and use these to kind of do like the small details on the edges and corners. Okay, so that's all done. I don't know if you can tell, but that's a lot less. And the area that was next to the valve guide was a very abrupt. I didn't want to take too much off there. I just mainly rounded the edges. I didn't do too much over here. Oh, in the back, I should say, but over here I took off a fairly significant amount to kind of smooth it all out, as you can tell. I also took the carbide drill bit, and just kind of scuffed up the inside of it as well before I did the sandpaper. The exhaust, I buffed it with a little buffering wheel. I can't really get in there next to the valve guide, unfortunately, but the actual exhaust port is quite smooth. It's almost feels like remember going to like the gym after in elementary school after they put that wax on there, it just kind of felt soft. That's what it feels like. Gym floor. Turn your engine into a gym floor. So in addition to that, I scuffed up the inside of this. Not too much, but it's probably a little dusty now, but I'll clean that up. I hope it goes without saying, you need to clean this fairly well. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to take some carb cleaner and kind of spray all around it. Compressed air, blow through there. You do not want to forget what went inside your valve guide. That'll just chew them up. Why do you do this? More or less, it's just for airflow. That's really about it. This is going to allow more air to flow in unobstructed. And if you scored it, or not scored it, but made the walls rigid or rough, it's going to itemize better, like I said, so you're going to get a better burn of the fuel that you're putting in there at a faster rate. In addition to that, with the exhaust, it's going to give you a much cleaner exit. You're not going to have the gases having to go in one direction, around another, and going out. No, it's more of a smooth, linear, semi-linear flow out. When you do this, you do need to probably, at the very least, drill your carb jet. One size bigger, maybe two. It depends on you know, how aggressive you are with this. You can be too aggressive. Don't want to say that you should just take off as much as you want, what you can. I'm not the boss of you. But if you do, know that some of this enclosure or taper is needed. If you take off too much, it can actually start to go the other way in performance. You're not going to have enough flow. It's hard to explain, but you kind of need to have a little bit of a taper to take that lower pressure, turn it to a higher, and force it into your engine. That's at least how I understood it. I could be wrong, but that makes sense to me. It's kind of also the same for the carburetor if you look at it. But anyway, right now I'm going to put this back on, but the porting and polishing should be done. It's not too hard. It did take me about 45 minutes to do all that. I didn't actually end up using the wheel like I thought. I just used the carbide bit, and it was just a lot easier. I didn't have to switch it out, and the wheel is too big, so that's another problem. But oh yeah, the exhaust. The exhaust I actually did take a little bit more off than the intake. Wasn't too much. Oh yeah, I also did. You can kind of see how that one's flat. This one's not as flat. The camera's not showing it very well, but I took off a little bit on the edges, so the intake is going to fold on a lot better, or bolt on a lot better, less drag. Because that's what the whole thing is. I mean, if you're going to be doing this, you don't want to drag, and if your adapter is going to be causing a little bit more, just fix it right now. You don't have to worry about it in the future. So this is porting and polishing finished.